Hey everybody, welcome back to the hangar deck. It's an exciting day for me today. It's a day that I've been waiting for a while, and it is the day that I'm going to begin my P3 build. And P3s hold a very near and dear place in my heart, as I was in a P3 squadron for about 3.5 years when I was in the Navy. It was really the only squadron I was in during my 4-year enlistment. Or the only thing I did during my 4-year enlistment. So, while we do this build, I'm going to tell you some interesting tales about the P3 and some sea stories, if you will. Those of you have been or in the Navy, you know what a sea story is. For those of you that don't know what a sea story is, sea stories are the way to tell the difference between sea stories and fairy tales. Fairy tales start with once upon a time. Sea stories begin with this is no bleep and you ain't gonna believe this. So anyway, all right, so let's look at the kit here for a few minutes. This is Hasegawa Mini Crafts 1/72 scale P3. This is a Charlie P-3C. This is the aircraft, the type that I worked on. It's even though it's 1/72, it's a fairly large model. When you get it all done, it leaves a lot to be desired as far as detail is concerned when it comes to things like the landing gear wheel wells. Trust me, there was a lot more in these than this. And the engine nacelles are pretty plain Jane, but that's okay. We can still make it a good model. And we'll talk about some of the different aspects of the things like the engine nacelles and the flaps and things like that. This is just going to be almost entirely an out-of-the-box build. You can buy all kinds of aftermarket accessories for these aircraft or for these kits, which really is kind of cool. You can buy bombays, and so you can cut the bombay doors off the fuselage and open them up, and it'll show the bombay. I'm sure you can buy interiors for them and all kinds of things. The only thing that I have done, well, let's continue and finish looking at the trees, and then I'll show you what I've bought in addition. So this is our next parts tree. This is the C parts tree. The one that I showed you before is the B parts tree. So this is the C parts tree. Some of you call them sprues. You can see the four-bladed props and what have you, and the forward engine nacelles. Looks like everything's in good shape. This is an older model, so you never know. This little item right here, this is near the rear of the fuselage. These are the sonobuoy ports. P3s carried a number of sonobuoys internally, and we'll talk about sonobuoys and some stories about sonobuoys when we do our updates. This is the radome. You'll notice there's a little cutout right here. Somewhere on one of these parts trees there should be the gondola, if you will, and that's what the camera was in. Actually, it is right here. It's an altogether clear part, but that'll have to be taped off and shot black because it was actually not clear except for where the camera sat. And speaking of clear parts, I'll go ahead and cover that now. One of the things that I purchased, really the only thing I purchased outside of the model itself, is an Edward masking kit. And so what that will do for us is that will allow us to mask off all of the clear parts and install them and then shoot the model and then peel those masks off later. So that'll make it a whole lot easier to deal with, and especially when it comes to this gondola, which hopefully this has the the tape on it for the gondola, but we'll find out. So we'll put these back in here. This is the main windscreen. And then moving right along, we have our instructions. They're pretty rudimentary, or pretty straightforward, I should say, as I recall, and they should be. There's not a lot of detail to this model, and that's fine. I'm not disappointed by it at all. Of course, this is not my first one to build. And then we have the fuselage, the right-hand fuselage half. Of course, there's nothing on the inside. And then the left-hand fuselage half. And again, there's nothing on the inside. And as you can even see, there's just kind of a blank where the door would go. You can do these with stairs up or stairs down. I'm going to do mine with stairs actually not installed. I shouldn't say up or down, not installed. So now let's talk a little bit about the P3 and what you find inside of it. So this, again, this is the left-hand side. So you would enter in about right here, and right straight across as you came in, this would be the right-hand observer station. A little bit forward and on the other side would be the left-hand, or the port side observer station. If we move up this way, we could see some sonobuoy tubes that were accessible from inside the aircraft. And then there was a sonobuoy rack about right here where we could carry more sonobuoys. And again, we'll talk about sonobuoys and what those were later. Moving back aft, we had a galley table right here. We had a couple of bunks about right here. And then on the other side, we had, there was a hot box where you could keep meals hot. There was a coffee pot, and then there was a juice container. In other words, it was a heavily insulated metal container that could keep hot things hot and cold things cold. About right here was the head bathroom, for those of you that don't know what a head is. You go in, there was a toilet to sit on, and then there was a honey pot right next to that. The honey pot was if you just had to do number one. And usually the low man on the totem pole had to take the honey pot out and go dump it at the end of the flight. So about right here was where the fuselage ended on the inside. There wasn't anything after that. And there were things underneath here that were hidden, but you couldn't see them from inside the aircraft. Moving back forward, we get back to the sonobuoy rack, as I had mentioned. We continue forward, and there was a long row of electronic racks, circuit breakers, things like that. And then about right here where you see this window was Sensor Station 3. Sensor Station 3 was primarily the forward and aft radar receivers, where he could look at the radar scope and see if somebody was coming to get him, or look at surface threats or surface tracks. You know, if a submarine surfaced, they definitely would see that, or if they raised their scope and they were close enough, they could see the scope. Pretty much directly across from Sensor Station 3 was Sensor Station 1 and 2. And those were fairly important guys. They were the guys that were listening to the sonobuoys and listening for underwater and surface contacts. And underwater contacts, primarily, we're talking about submarines. And during my time, they were primarily Soviet submarines. And that was the main mission of the P-3, was to seek out and surveil, and if wartime came, prosecute submarine or submerged contacts. But they could also prosecute surface contacts too. Again, during my time, it was after Vietnam, but it was during the height of what became known as the boat people crisis, where people from Vietnam were getting in boats and just trying to get anywhere. other than Vietnam. And anytime our aircraft were operating in that area, they were always looking for boat people. And if they found them, they would fly to another ship and try to get that ship to come rescue those people. So this little square window right here, that is an overwing escape hatch. Right situated close to this window was a life raft. And then on the other side, not quite in line, but a little bit oblique to this escape hatch, was another over window escape hatch and another life raft. I think there was a 6-man and a 12-man raft. Forward of Sensor Station 3 were more electronics and more buses, circuit breakers. Then right in this section right here, this was the NavCom. So this was the navigator communicator. So he was responsible for keeping the aircraft on course and communicating with the outside world. This was the first position that was manned by an NFO, or Naval Flight Officer. Across from the NavCom was the TACO, or the Tactical Coordinator. That was also an officer position. And interestingly enough, the pilot was the plane commander until they got on station, and then the TACO took over, and the TACO told them how long they were going to stay on station. If it was wartime, they might stay on station until they ran out of fuel and ditched. But of course, that didn't happen during peacetime. But the TACO was in charge of the mission while they were on the mission, and then when the mission was over, or he released the aircraft back to the plane commander, then he took over and they flew back. Going on forward, right between the pilot on this side and the co-pilot on that side was the flight engineer. The flight engineer was in charge of making sure that all engines were functioning properly. Oftentimes the flight engineer was the guy that was moving the throttles to set engine speed. Of course, the aircraft or the engines were constant speed with a 2-speed prop. And the prop actually, now you mech guys can correct me on this, but the prop actually turned to bite more air when they go faster, or to go faster. And the engine sped up to keep up with that because it was a constant speed. So on the left-hand side was the pilot. On the right-hand side was the co-pilot. Oftentimes there was an observer on this side that was a ordnanceman, and there was an observer on the other side that was what was called an IFT, or an in-flight technician. Sometimes there was an additional ordnanceman on board, or a second mech, which was a flight engineer assistant. And sometimes there was even an additional ASW, or a guy that would relieve one of the other guys to listen to surface contacts or subsurface contacts. So that's pretty much the inside of the P3. What I plan on doing on this build is kind of like I've done on other builds. I've seen guys do full build videos, and those are great, but I don't have the technology to do that. I don't have a dedicated video camera where I can do full build videos and then splice them all together and give you a 30-minute video as I build this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to work on this aircraft. I'm going to build it, and then I'm going to do updates. And we're going to talk about different aspects of the aircraft as I'm doing the build, things that I recall, funny things, maybe not so funny things, maybe even things not directly related to the aircraft, but things that happened when I was in the Navy. Some of them are pretty hysterical. To give you an idea, a little background on the P3 community, they were called VP Navy, V being fixed wing, P being patrol. There's VF Navy, that's fixed wing fighters. Now they're all VFA, fixed wing fighter attack. There's VC, those are cargo and fixed wing, cargo, and I believe they also do VIP flights and things like that. There are helicopter squadrons, H being Helo, HSL, which was, well, they do the work of the P-3, except they do it from on board ship. And it's been a long time since I've had to think about SL, so I can't remember what that is, but somebody will give it to us in the comments. And so anyway, anytime you see the V in front of a aircraft designation in the Navy, it means fixed wing. So we were the VP community. We were VP Navy. We were Navy all the way, but we were never gray and underway. So what does that mean? That means we were never on board ship because our aircraft were too big and they forgot to put the tail hook on. We didn't have a tail hook. Our aircraft were way too big to land on a carrier, and there was no tail hook to stop them. So now they have landed P-3s on carriers, and they've launched they have landed C-130s on carriers, and they have launched C-130s from carriers, but they really haven't done that since the late 70s, early 80s that I'm aware of. So we'll be talking about a lot of cool things, a lot of cool sea stories as we're working on this. I'll give you updates periodically on the build. By the way, I did want to show you the decals. These are the decals that come with the kit. You can tell these decals have been around for a while. They probably would shatter if I got them wet. But that's okay because we're probably not going to use any of them anyway. I'm not going to do this squadron. This squadron is VP-19. They were called the Milpitas Chickens because of Milpitas, California, which was close to Sunnyvale. And they were one of our sister squadrons. Had a really cool tail symbol. But I'm going to do my aircraft in VP-48. And I may I'm sure I will use some of these decals if I can. They look pretty bad, so I may have to get some decal restorer. One thing that I'm definitely not going to use is I am not going to use any of these walkaway decals. Why? I'm glad you asked. The reason why is they are the wrong color. The walkways on P3s were not gray. They were black. They were flat black. They were non-skid flat black. They were not gray. So I will paint my own walkways on, tape them off, and then paint the rest of the aircraft, and then pull the tape at the end. I've already got one of these that I've built. So anyway, not sure which one I'll do. I'm thinking probably SF2. Which SF was the tail designation for my squadron, VP-48. This is the tail designation for VP-19, Papa Echo, or PE. Ours was Sierra Foxtrot. And I'm thinking I'll do SF2. I'm just thinking that, but we'll see. And anyway, that's what we're going to do. We're going to have some fun. Going to tell some stories, and we're going to build a model. What could be better than that? So, there you have it. We'll let the fun and frivolity begin. On your way out of the hangar deck, please beware of the rotor blades, beware of prop wash. Please stay away from the jet intakes, and watch out for that jet blast. And by the way, at 1600 today, we're going to do a FOD walk down on the apron, so we don't have to worry about any FOD. One of these days, I'll tell you what FOD is. All right, you guys take care. We'll see you later.